Louisiana. I'm Chef John Folse, welcoming you to this great state of ours. These beautiful plantation homes reflect the fascinating history of our culture and cuisine, and I'd like to share this story with you. Why not join me and some of my friends as we visit the plantation homes of our state and cook up another great Taste of Louisiana.
Funding for this program was provided in part by Bruce Foods Corporation, makers of Louisiana Gold and other distinctive Louisiana-style food products. Additional funding is provided by the Louisiana Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism. Gumbo, etouffee, jambalaya, beignet. Come pass a good time in Louisiana and say things you've never seen before.
It seems like only yesterday that I was a student in Mr. Labatt's 4th grade class and heard for the first time the term Louisiana Architecture. He was trying to instill upon us that much of our construction is unique to Louisiana and that we should come to recognize it. I remember him saying that the easiest to spot was Greek Revival because that's the big Greek columns on the front of our antebellum homes. He went on to say that the little cute cabins along the river road was probably Acadian or French Creole. But my favorite was always the Victorian. He said that that was the Hansel and Gretel type houses, always very ornate and whimsical in character. But you know, he never did tell us to look for the Oriental dragons carved out of the woodwork or to look for the Chinese abacus around the front porch. But he should have. I'm Chef John Folse. Welcome to Poplar Grove Plantation. This building began life not as a plantation home, but as the Bankers Pavilion of the 1884 World's Fair in New Orleans. It was the end of the Victorian period, and architect Thomas Sully decided to carve in some of the Oriental influence that was very much in vogue in that day. Look at the abacus across the front porch and the dragon that you just saw. At the end of the fair, the house was actually loaded up on a barge and shipped upriver about 150 miles and put on this beautiful landscape in West Baton Rouge Parish. Of course, formal gardens were put in everywhere. I was able to talk to Anne Wilkinson, the owner of the plantation, about some of the Victorian styles. Anne, you know, if any room in Louisiana could lure in Hansel and Gretel, this is it.
Well, John, you're absolutely right. The key word in the Victorian period was ornament, and this room is definitely ornamented. Victorians loved fanciful colors and elaborate schemes in their wallpapers. As you can see, the wallpaper has been put on the ceiling in a very intricate design. The motifs in the wallpaper are flowers and birds. There's gilding. The stained glass in this room is very representative of what the Victorians were interested in. They liked lots of color. They liked things to be homey and beautiful. As you know, this house was the Bankers Pavilion at the Cotton Exposition in 1884. And I've collected, as well as typical Victorian furniture, I've collected some artifacts from the fair. You see here there's a souvenir sherry cup that's engraved with the date of the fair and the initials of the person who probably purchased this souvenir.
The furnishings of this exotic home reflect many astonishing features other than Victorian, such as the Chinese, Italianate, and even Queen Anne designs. However, Victorian is ever present in the house. Anne is a great collector of antiques and all types of Chinese porcelain, and she loves to entertain, so the tables are always set, and she's ready to just sit at this piano and get out a great tune for her guest. Once thousands of little sugar mill towns, or factory towns as we call them, dotted the highways of South Louisiana. After all, this is the sugar corridor. And thanks to the Wilkinson family and grants from the Foundation for Historical Louisiana and the Convention and Visitors Bureau of Baton Rouge, this little sugar mill town at Poplar Grove has been saved. And for 2 weeks in December, they light it all up for people to come from all over the country and see what life was like on an early plantation. What beautiful color in a home. If you like color, you like wallpaper patterns, you won't want to miss Poplar Grove Plantation in Port Allen, Louisiana. It's absolutely gorgeous. And when I think of the house, I often think about what a spectacle must have occurred on the riverbank when that house was being barged upriver from New Orleans after the World's Fair there in 1884. It must have created quite havoc in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Now, you notice those little lighted cabins. That's one of the factory towns, as I mentioned, and to think that for Christmas they'll light all those little houses up and there's gospel singers there. I've got a good friend who's going to come to talk about that, how it happened, why do they do it. Anne Timmons is with the West Baton Rouge Tourist Commission, and she plays a big part in lighting up that little factory town, and she's going to come and visit and tell us all about it. You won't want to miss that either after you hear about it. Now, when I was visiting Poplar Grove, we got to talking about the foods that were created there, and one of the exciting things that happened while I was sitting on the porch was talking about the Italian influence in the cooking. It seems that there was an Italian gardener who worked on the plantation for many years, and because he was Italian and grew all of the Italian goods, all of that influence ended up on the tables of Poplar Grove. So we're going to cook some of the dishes that he influenced, and the first one that I want to show you is sitting right here on the cutting board, and it's a breakfast dish, if you can imagine. It's going to be a chicken and oyster fricassee, or a plantation chicken and oyster stew, as they call it. And we're going to begin with just a regular fryer that's cut in 8 pieces. And you notice that I have oyster mushrooms here. These are the great mushrooms that grow all over the swamplands of Louisiana. I'm going to flavor it with andouille, which is the smoked meats of the Cajuns. But look at here. Fresh shucked oysters right out of the Gulf of Mexico and some of those bayous. And I had a question as to how did those oysters get from the Gulf of Mexico in the 1800s to the river, because imagine how hot it must have been and the spoilage. But I found that even in Abe Lincoln's day, they used to load up oysters on bugboards with horses and cover the oysters with wet straw and then bring them all the way to Illinois and then to the White House for great oyster shucking parties. So if they could do it then, you can imagine that it could have been done in the swamplands of Louisiana. So to begin my oyster and chicken fricassee, plantation style, I want you to look at my black iron pot here, because I've begun with a little light brown roux. Now, as you know, a roux is equal parts of oil and flour. And what we've done, you see the color of it here. This is a really nice, what is this, more of a khaki color than a dark brown. And a roux in Louisiana cooking serves 3 purposes. We obviously use it for thickening. As you can see, it's going to thicken the dish. And then it's also going to color, because we can take it to any color we want, and it's going to flavor. The roux will give any dish a nice pecan or nutty flavor. I'm going to put all of the seasonings of Cajun country into my fricassee. I've got a little onions, celery right here. I'm putting the celery in because this is a typical stew, and any seasonings that you would normally put in a stew would certainly go into this dish. Let me keep my fire up here. The roux cooks for about 15 or 20 minutes on high, again equal parts of oil and flour, stirring constantly so you don't scorch it. And once it gets to that nice brown color here, I add all of my seasonings. Now I'm going to put in a little touch of garlic. I've got onions, celery, bell pepper. Put garlic into it here, and of course I can put some of my colored bell peppers. I like to put these in also just because it's going to be a breakfast dish on a buffet table. You know good and well it's got to have color. I wish you could smell all of these wonderful seasonings sauteing in this roux. It's really a nice aroma in the kitchen, but look how nice this is, just really great. Now I'm going to saute the chicken in the roux. I'm going to put the chicken down into the pot. I'm going to put the skin side up here because once it hits the roux, it's going to actually start to saute. But I'm going to season the chicken now that it's into the pot. I'm going to put a little bit salt right on top of it like this. I'm going to put a touch of cracked black pepper, how nice that is, and a little bit of this Louisiana pepper sauce to give it the spice that we need. And I would allow the chicken to kind of just white itself out, as I say. We're just going to put it down in here to make sure that the chicken starts to saute down into that roux and release all of those good vegetable, all these good chicken juices and vegetable juices down into the pot. Look how nice this is. And stir it around to blend it. You can imagine how hot that roux is, about 500 degrees here. And once that's done, then I'm going to add this little secret ingredient. I want you to take a look at this. Look at the size of this oyster, if you will. This is the American variety of oyster, the American species. There's a bunch of species of oysters, but these are the ones from Louisiana's waters, and I'm going to put about 3 or 4 of them into the pot, and then my andouille, which will give the dish a nice smoky flavor. The oyster mushrooms, obviously, are very, very nice. Put a couple more in there. And blend all of those flavors around. Well, I tell you, the smell, the aroma out of this pot is absolutely incredible. Now, I can make my stew by putting in my chicken stock. And I've got a nice pitcher of chicken stock. You can use chicken bouillon cubes if you want to. You can just go into the store, get some of the little cubes and boil them in water, and it'll give you a nice chicken stock. However, I like to boil the bones of chicken. I like to just go ahead and take a chicken, debone some of it, or even take a big baking hen and bake it for a couple of, boil it for a couple of minutes until all of the meat starts to come off of the bone. And you can use that meat in this stew if you would like, and it's going to be just great. Use the stock in the place of water here. Okay, once all of this is dissolved into the roux, I would add a little touch of my oyster liquid right here, and my oysters, the rest of my oysters, and then I could put some green onions, so pretty that is, a little touch of chopped parsley, and, of course, you want to end it with a little salt and pepper to finish the flavoring in the pot. Let this cook for about 30, 40 minutes or so until the chicken gets nice and tender, and I want to show you what it looks like, how I would serve this, or how it would have been served at Poplar Grove many, many years ago. And I want you to look at this nice little Chinese bowl. After all, this Chinese influence there. And this little bowl here has in the center of it some polenta, or yellow grits, so to speak. And I'm going to come up to this pot that's already done. Look how nice this is. Look at the gravy in here, how nice. I'm going to put a big spoon of that sauce right on top of it like this. And imagine a breakfast dish using oysters and chicken in the early days of Louisiana. Come here, I've got to get a big breast out of here to put right on top of it. Look at that. And then, of course, you can fish around in there and get some of those oysters. There's 2 of them right on top of the dish. Isn't that beautiful? Now, how would it be served at the table? Well, you want to garnish it again. Put a little bit of that red bell pepper on top of it, and just put that lid just like that, and imagine the surprise when you open it up. Just beautiful dish. Chicken and oyster fricassee of Poplar Grove Plantation. Now, the next dish that I found there really excited me because you know that this is Italian. I want you to take a look in this bowl. Just get a glimpse of this. This is artichokes. Now, most people would think that artichokes didn't exist in Louisiana, but look at this nice globe artichoke here. This actually came with the French to Louisiana. And not only were they grown for food, but the artichoke was actually grown in all the gardens as an ornamental plant. I didn't even know that myself till I started to research all of these foods. But the French would put them as a garden plant at the end of the rows, beautiful leaves, and then the artichokes would just shoot out of the top of the plant. Now, to stuff them, obviously, very easy to do. We take some seasoned Italian breadcrumbs here, some fresh Romano cheese. You see the Romano we've grated. You want to grate the Romano cheese fresh. And then Italian herbs. We have little red basil. We have some oregano, garlic, of course. And you just want to mix all of those things together like this. It's kind of fun to do. You can even get kids involved in this. Really a nice, nice dish, simple dish to do on a Saturday afternoon. Let me get that out of here. And look at the artichokes. Now, what I've done, you can do a couple different things. You can take a scissors and cut all of the leaves around here. This is the Roman style, and open it up and pull all of this center out of it and begin to stuff it from the inside out. Or in today's busy kitchens, you can actually take a knife and slice the bottom off of the artichoke and then cut the center and pull out just by hand, just pull the inside out like this, and look how nice that is. And then we can start to stuff it with this really nice filling. You want to put the breadcrumbs and the cheese right in the middle like that. And then you can start from the outside, from the inside out, just push the leaves back and go ahead and fill the artichoke just like that. All these little areas between the leaves, you want to go ahead and fill with this nice cheese and bread, herb, garlic stuffing. What a wonderful, easy thing to do. And again, this is a great thing to do in the afternoon with kids. It keeps them busy for a while, and it's a nice nutritional meal, I guarantee you. And it's filling, too, a lot of breadcrumbs. Look at this. Now, I have one already done. I've got 2 of them here now already done. Take a look at this one here, how pretty it is. It's got all that nice color on it. You can see how full it is. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take them, and I want you to watch this. I'm going to put them in a baking pan that's on my stove with about, a 1/4 inch of water in the bottom of it. And I'm going to lay them down in there just to steam them. Let me move this out of the way. And I would have to drizzle the top of the artichoke with olive oil. Now, you have to get a look at this. I want to put about 1/2 cup of olive oil on top of each one of those artichokes, because it's got to steam in olive oil and water. And then you would cover it, put a lid on top of it like this, and on a low heat, you want to steam it for about an hour to an hour and a half. And look at what it looks like. Take a look at that dish of the Italian stuffed artichokes of Poplar Grove Plantation. Isn't this gorgeous? Grown right there on the plantation. And another dish that I found fascinating that comes from there, very important in Louisiana cooking, is the crab meat stuffed eggplant. Not only do we have the purple eggplant, but we have the white and the green eggplant as well, all stuffed with the meat of the eggplant and lump crab meat. Beautiful dishes, all from the Italian influence at Poplar Grove Plantation. Well, I told you my good friend Anne Timmons was coming to visit with me. We're going to talk about all the cabins and the lights at Poplar Grove. Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good to see you. What do you have here?
Well, I'm not quite sure what this is. I know you're a collector of old kitchen hardware. I thought perhaps you could tell me.
Well, I tell you, it's an interesting looking piece. I remember my grandfather had an old mule barn, and I think we had something pretty similar to this. This is what I think to be a corn shucker. You would actually, after you shucked the corn, a sheller, I mean, you would run the ears of corn over the top of it. But what's amazing about it is the detail. Somebody had to carve all of this out and put the little metal fittings down in the wood. You can see how they had to groove it out there. There's a lot of work. And this is made out of oak, I would imagine. Very, very heavy. Beautiful piece. And I'm sure you're giving me this, right?
Oh, no, it belongs to the museum.
The museum would kill you. You know, when we were all sitting on the porch at Poplar Grove the other day, and we were talking about the Italian influence, as I have for the last couple minutes, we were talking about that Italian ice cream, that fig ice cream. Do you remember that conversation?
Absolutely.
And y'all were going to make some. Did you make it?
Oh, yeah, that's a Wilkinson family tradition.
Not only is it a Wilkinson family tradition, I tried it. It's so great, it's going to be a tradition at my house. But I want to make it a tradition of all these folks, because it is one of the very special ice creams, I think, of Louisiana, coming from Poplar Grove. And I need a hand, if you would, to help me make it. What I have here in my bowl is 3 eggs, and I want you to kind of whip that around a little bit and just kind of stir it to make sure that all of those eggs are crushed into the bowl. And then I'll go ahead and let you add, there you go, you did a great job of that. Now add about that's 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. You can use something a little lighter if you want, I don't know why. But anyway, that's enough. And then 1 cup of the condensed milk, and that's going to make it real nice, thick and sweet. Look how sweet that's going to be, the good condensed milk. I've got the eggs and the milk will now form a real nice custardy ice cream. Now a little touch of the sugar. I've got 2 different sugars here. I've got the brown sugar. That came from, you know where, Sinclair Sugar House. Put a little bit of that in. Just sprinkle that. There you go, just about 1/2 cup. And that gives it a good molasses taste. Goes good with figs and a little bit of that. And then, of course, we can put some a little vanilla, a touch of that cinnamon and nutmeg. Just go ahead and put a little bit of that in there. I'm going to sprinkle. There you go. And, of course, the figs. I need you to put about, let's say 1/2 cup of those nice figs down in there. Now, this is fig preserve that we take the figs and season and make sure we can enough of them to give us a great supply of figs to make this ice cream with. Okay, that's good right there. Now, once this is all whipped up, of course, you know what I would do with it. I'd take it and I'd put it in one of those ice cream freezers, either the electric type or the old crank type. And I knew with all this work, we'd have to taste some, right? So what I've done, I've made some up in the freezer. And if you do that, I want to show all of these people out here one of these antique ice cream freezers that I love to collect. So you get the ice cream, I'll get the freezer. Now I want everybody to take a look at this, if you would. This is a really nice old ice cream freezer from the late 1800s, early 1900s. You can see this. And people are collecting these all over America. So if you ever walk into an antique store and you see one of these, or the old ice cream scoop with the wooden handle, make sure that you pick these up because they're getting very rare, and you want to make sure that you can find these. So, hey, wonderful old ice cream freezer, just really great. Okay, Anne, let's sit down and we're going to sample some of this ice cream. Take a look at this, will you? I've got two nice bowls, and I'm going to put a little of the fig preserve. I've saved some for a topping right here, right there. Put a couple of nice figs, and just go ahead and enjoy that bowl. I'm going to get a bite myself. How does that look, huh?
Ooh, that looks gorgeous.
Let me ask you a question about Poplar Grove.
Okay.
You're great friends with Anne Wilkinson over there. The architecture of that plantation is so interesting, and of course with the Chinese design. But Anne takes such great care of keeping it authentic whenever she does anything with it. She must really go to great pains, huh?
Well, she does. Even when she's repainted it, she has authentic colors that were fashionable in the Victorian day.
When I walk through it and I see all of these great patterns of color, I think to myself how great it must be for visitors to come in and see that place for the first time, and just they have to be shocked by the stained glass and the wonderful designs that's in there.
They love it. In fact, Europeans in particular love being able to come into this home because they're actually in a plantation home and they're being hosted by the person who's lived there, who lives there now, and her family's lived there for 8 generations.
I mentioned a while ago about the spectacle that must have occurred in Port Island, right across from Baton Rouge, when this house was moved upriver from New Orleans after the World's Fair. I can imagine this house being loaded on a barge and coming. You living there, do you ever hear any stories about it?
Yes, in fact, I have heard. Mrs. Landry said that her mother told the story of seeing this exotic structure floating up the river, and of course it eventually landed on the riverbank, close, about 500 feet, I guess, away from where the site is now. Because, you know, the levee wasn't there then.
Yeah, so it made it easier to
Much
move it onto
easier,
the shore. Now, is it open to the public, or I know there's a lot of people there all the time?
Oh, not all the time. It's open to groups by advance reservation for special events, for meals, for tours.
So people can get in if they want to. One of the, obviously the most interesting thing that happens near Poplar Grove every year is the plantation lights, or the Christmas lights at Poplar Grove Plantation. Tell me a little bit about how that got started.
Well, John, of course, the site is the old sugar mill, the workers' cabins, and the site of the old sugar mill. But Anne Wilkinson was in Christmas in the Oaks in New Orleans one year, and she was sitting there looking at all these gorgeous lights and all these oak trees, and she was listening to the gospel choirs, and her son Steele said, "Mama, we could do that at Poplar Grove."
And they did it, obviously, and she did it single-handedly for the first couple of years. What did the locals think when they saw her out there stringing lights across all these little cabins?
Well, of course, they were skeptical at first, but then they've gotten really excited about it. There are a lot of community volunteers now working together.
And everybody comes out, all the different civic clubs. Somebody was telling me they cook food during those 2 weeks. When is it open to the public?
For about a week before Christmas and a week after Christmas.
Oh, I tell you, I can't wait to get out there again. I was so excited the last time I was there. The miles and miles of traffic, people coming to see all those little cabins lit up and taste some of the food. It's spectacular. Tell me a little bit about the West Baton Rouge Museum, because I'm going to be cooking there in a few weeks. Tell me about that.
Well, of course, you're going to be cooking in the Allendale cabin, and there's a functioning fireplace there where they do the open hearth cooking. In fact, that implement came from that cabin. That's from Allendale Plantation. It's a pre-Civil War cabin. And also at the museum, you know, there's that sugar mill model that it's the size of a room. It's as tall as a man.
And it really gives a good example about what the sugar mills look like today. So people ought to get out there and visit that West Baton Rouge Museum. It's great. And thank you so much for coming to visit with me today and sharing those stories. And thank you all. And please come back again as we continue to cook up more of these great Taste of Louisiana and maybe some more fig ice cream. Let's get a bite of this.
Yeah.
Huh? This is great stuff.
Funding for this program was provided in part by Bruce Foods Corporation, makers of Bruce's Yams and other distinctive Louisiana-style food products. Additional funding is provided by the Louisiana Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism, Gumbo, Etouffee, Jambalaya, Beignet. Come pass a good time in Louisiana and say things you've never seen before.
Chef John Folse's Plantation Celebrations, Recipes from Our Louisiana Mansions, is a full-color 335-page book containing food history, recipes, and over 150 photographs from these southern landmarks. For your copy, send a check or money order for $28.50 to Louisiana Public Broadcasting, 7860 Anselmo Lane, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70810. Or use your credit card by calling toll-free 1-800-973-7246.